Why wasn't alligator wrestling included in the Paris Summer Olympics? Yoo-hoo! And thanks for tuning in to another awful movie review.
That name doesn't mean anything to you?
No. Should it?
What do actors Beverly Garland, Bruce Bennett, and Lon Chaney Jr. all have in common?
You folks certainly must be popular.
Well, they were all alligator people. A rather low-budget science fiction horror mystery film which actually surpasses all the bad movies I've reviewed before by a milestone. The Alligator People is probably the best bad movie I've reviewed ever.
Bet you never seen nothing like that before.
But it's still not very good. But just before we get going, if there's a bad movie you'd like me to review, leave me a comment down below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, let me know your thoughts and feelings on the Alligator People.
Thanks. Appreciate your interest.
Fox Studios needed a low-budget movie to release as a double bill with The Return of the Fly, so they made this one, which to my astonishment is actually not nearly as bad as I thought it would be. I mean, it's not great, but I find myself in a bind because it's not bad enough for me to give it the what an awful movie treatment, but it's also not good enough to be featured on cult horror reviews.
But what am I gonna do, Eric?
It's like in between, it's below average, let's put it that way, and we'll see why in a second. I've got to start by giving credit where credit is due. Beverly Garland gives a surprisingly decent performance for this type of movie, playing a newlywed named Joyce married to a guy named Paul. On their wedding night, Paul receives a telegram which makes him get off the train and disappear. His wife has got to go to hell and back in order to find traces of him. Her lengthy investigation on the disappearance of Paul leads her to a plantation in the Louisiana Bayou.
Real deep, big trouble.
Surprised she was able to find that, considering she's the same person who sits down on a crate of radioactive material.
Do you know a place? I think it's a plantation called the Cypresses.
No, I don't know what would make you think such a thing. This movie changed my perspective on alligators because I always thought those things were dangerous beasts.
You don't mean that.
But here they're pretty docile. I mean, Joyce keeps tripping over them in the dark and somehow doesn't get chomped to pieces. For the whole movie, the alligators are the targets of massive bullying. They get run over, shot at, used as lab rats, and even get the shit beaten out of them. Poor devils.
I imagine that did sound a bit depressing.
I'll start with the things I did like. Like I just said, the acting for the most part is rather decent. Garland is good in her role, so is Bruce Bennett, and I also like Lon Chaney Jr. as a drunken one-handed kook who really hates gators. And I mean, really hates gators.
Dirty, stinking, slimy gators. But I ain't never gonna stop shooting gators. I'll kill you, alligator man! Just like I'd kill any four-legged gator.
Being a sucker for the southern gothic look, I really like the location of the swamp, giving the movie atmosphere, where things go bump in the night.
Oh, you mean the swamp.
And I also liked how the movie sets up the story. The plot is told through the perspective of Joyce, who retells her repressed traumatic memory through hypnosis, with the help of her psychiatrist.
Well, Jane, here we go again.
It's also a mystery movie, because for the first half, the film does a decent job at making us wonder what happened to Paul. We know that the plantation owners are hiding something awful, we just don't know what.
I'll never be able to tell you.
The problem with the Alligator People is not the many bloopers that can be found in lots of other bad movies, nor the poor quality or laughable acting, although the actress playing Paul's mother leaves a lot to be desired.
You can't talk to me like that.
What makes this below average in my opinion is the fact that the movie fails to deliver a satisfying answer to what it's been building up to all this time. It's kind of like someone crashing down after a big high. During the second half, the movie slowly sinks into typical silly B-movie tropes, and it really doesn't help that the Alligator Man effects are pretty laughable. You can obviously tell it's just a rubber suit.
I find that difficult to believe.
In the beginning though, Paul kinda looks like the Hulk. I would have liked to see more of Paul in the form of an alligator, maybe see him go on a rampage or something like that, see him becoming more menacing. But after turning into a monster, he runs away into the swamp, briefly fights an alligator, and then falls into quicksand and dies. That's it. A very unsatisfying and lackluster ending. I think the writers could have made something much more exciting.
Don't blame yourself. I certainly don't.
So overall, this movie is a little bit hard to review. This is an exceptional review, because I wanted to like this movie more, I really did. It's a film with some good qualities, but because of some clunky writing and very questionable effects, it loses its juice and winds up being subpar. I wouldn't really recommend it. Since I can't really call this an awful movie, I'm just going to go out and say, what a very mediocre movie.